Anthony Richardson was informed that he will not be the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. And they're going with Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones, aka Danny Pennies. Now, Richardson has been through a lot, and it's looking like the experiment with him is over. And this is a super physically talented guy that a lot of people were high on, including Pete Carroll. Now, you can look at some of the tools that he has right here, man, and it shows you why there are a lot of people. He's elite, big arm, big guy, can move. Now, Pete Carroll, back when he was with the Seattle Seahawks, said that they would have considered taking Anthony Richardson if he fell to number 5. And Carroll had a lot more to say. As you can see in this article from Shane Steichen in The Athletic, Pete Carroll flew all the way out to go see him, to be around him, to watch him throw. I mean, everything, the way he handles stuff, and they were really, really enamored with him. Now, thinking about making a move like this is the kind of move that the great Al Davis would have made. Al Davis always routinely went out there and brought in guys who kind of had issues, but had a lot of ability. And this just seems like a Raider-ass move.
So Anthony Richardson, the 4th pick overall in the 2023 draft, was informed yesterday that he will not be starting for the Indianapolis Colts. Now, Anthony Richardson is one of the most physically gifted quarterbacks that we've seen coming to this league in quite a long time. He is, elite as far as arm talent, speed, strength, size, and he's super young, right? And these some of the pros about Anthony Richardson, man. I mean, he's younger than several quarterbacks in the National Football League, such as Bo Nix for the Denver Broncos, C.J. Stroud for the Texans, Caleb Williams, even guys that have just come into the league, a few rookies, man, Tyler Shuck, Shador Sanders, and Dylan Gabriel. Anthony Richardson turns 24 next year, and he's still relatively cheap with 2 years left on his deal. And with me saying that, there's a reason why Anthony Richardson got beat out. I mean, the guy has not played well at all. I mean, not playing well is an understatement. I mean, they've given him every chance really to solidify that job. And the Colts wisely brought in another young quarterback for him to compete with. And all he had to do was solidify the job was to beat out Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is 28 years old, very athletic, and listen, the Indianapolis Colts brass understand that they're here for a good time, not a long time. They're not going to, go the same fate as coaches and GMs of the past, just kind of sinking with the ship. So they decided to be proactive and bring in Daniel Jones. Now, Anthony Richardson, if we're being honest, man, has been putrid, man. I mean, out of 55 QBs with at least 175 attempts in the last 2 years, Richardson ranks 55th in accuracy, 55th in completion rate, and 50th in touchdown to interception ratio. That's terrible. Now, there was a lot of people say, hey, man, he doesn't have a lot of experience, right? Now, looking at QBs in only their first 2 years, minimum 300 attempts, right? Since 2000, 25 years old, there are 103 QBs. Anthony Richardson ranks 103rd in accuracy. He ranks 102nd in completion rate. He ranks 94 out of 103 in success rate. He ranks 88 out of 103 in touchdown to interception ratio. And he ranks 81st in EPA. And, on passes thrown 7+ yards down the field with no pressure. Let's adjust here, right? Let's look at that, right? Looking at only QBs in their first 2 years, man, this is what we're dealing with. Now, Anthony Richardson, I mean, look, man, he's been pretty bad, man. I mean, man, 38% completion on passes over 7+ yards, man. And he has an NFL average of 57% passing, man. He has only 1 TD and 6 interceptions. And look, those numbers are clearly terrible, man. He was given his shot, and it really didn't work out for him, right? Now, there are a lot of people who would say, man, listen, this guy's career arc has been terrible. It's been wild. You got to give him a shot. Now, he only had 13 career starts in college. And that's a big part of why a lot of people wouldn't want to be in the Anthony Richardson business, right? He had a 55% completion percentage at the University of Florida. He only had 4 starts in his rookie season, right? He was week 1 starter in 2024. I think that was kind of a mistake, right? You had some issues with him where he took himself out of a game, and a lot of people question his toughness. And you know, he was renamed a starter, and he did nothing to really earn that. And after that, you know, he had a 48% completion percentage in year 2, man. And he now just lost his job in 2025 to Daniel Jones. Now, this is the funny thing, man. You know, a lot of people are saying the Anthony Richardson experience is over. The experiment is over. The Indianapolis Colts publicly have said that they believe in Anthony Richardson. But listen, we can all see action speaks louder than words. Now, we can kind of draw on a parallel to this with Bryce Young. Bryce Young, some thought was done with. Some people thought that Carolina was done with Bryce Young. They started, you know, the Red Rocket, Andy Dalton for the remainder of the season. But I think this is a little different because of the simple fact that they are going into a season starting another quarterback who is 28 years old. You know, Andy Dalton owes the Carolina Panthers nothing. He's an older guy, you know, so you don't see really a real future. But the Colts can really, for the next 10 years, if Daniel Jones is successful, have him as their starting quarterback. He's still young. He's athletic. He's big. He's strong. He throws the ball hard. And he has a lot of weapons with the Indianapolis Colts, right? So this is looking like the end of a marriage, man. I mean, Stephen Holder, the agent for Anthony Richardson, said that trust is a big factor. And that is it. He goes, at best, questionable right now. And Anthony came back. He made the improvements in the areas he needed to improve in. And by all accounts, he had a great camp. Now, listen, we know that could be agent speak. He has to protect and defend his client. But Anthony Richardson has done nothing to help himself with his past. Let's just be for real here. Now, others say that he is too talented to not take a flyer on. And, you know, I said earlier in this video, Pete Carroll was enamored with Anthony Richardson. And had he been there at 5, the Seattle Seahawks might have entertained taking him over Devin Witherspoon the year that he came out. And, you know, Anthony Richardson could easily be a player similar to Randall Cunningham. Now, Randall Cunningham had a 56% completion percentage. You know, he only had a 1.5 to touchdown to interception ratio. And he did it over 16 years. But he made so many explosive plays that it didn't matter, right? And Randall got it together towards the end of his career. Randall was a thrower of the football once he became a Minnesota Viking. And, you know, but when he was with the Eagles, he wasn't the most accurate guy in the world, but he was just so explosive that people were willing to live with the inaccuracies, right? People were willing to live with that. People were willing to live with him not really being a pocket passer, right? With the 56% completion percentage. Now, that is an era of football that is long gone, right? Michael Vick, same thing. Michael Vick was so dynamic and so explosive that you were willing to live with the fact that he was not the best, quote unquote, quarterback. Now, listen, when I look at Anthony Richardson, right, and I look at if Pete Carroll and the Raiders were to make a move on him, you know, and like I said earlier, it reminds me of an Al Davis kind of move. Now, Al Davis was routinely a guy who would bring in high draft picks, guys that were jettisoned from other teams, and rehabilitate their careers, right? We can go back to Jim Plunkett. You know, Jim Plunkett was brought in, and, you know, he was the number 1 pick overall, former Heisman Trophy winner. It did not go well with the Patriots. It did not go well with the 49ers, and he wound up with the Raiders. And he became a 2-time Super Bowl winner, right? We can go back to Rich Gannon. Well, Rich Gannon was not a high draft pick. He was kind of a journeyman guy, and he came here with the Raiders and played his best football with the Raiders. And there's a multitude of people that we can name that have had a second act with the Raiders, and it really became greater than their first act. And I can totally see that happening. Now, people might be asking, what might it cost you to get an Anthony Richardson. So when I think of Anthony Richardson and I think of all of the kind of examples of an Anthony Richardson kind of a scenario, I go back to Trey Lance. Now, Trey Lance was only a couple of years ago, right? And he was drafted in 2021, came off of the COVID year. He did not really play his senior year. He didn't play since his junior year in college. And he was drafted by the San Francisco 49ers. And they traded up to actually get him too, right? So they gave up a significant number of future draft picks to draft Trey Lance, man. He was from a small school. You know, Anthony Richardson, conversely, is from the SEC, played at Florida, big-time college football down there. But Trey Lance is a guy who came from North Dakota State, right? And he was considered a high upside prospect, similar to Anthony Richardson. He only had 1 full year of starting experience in college, right? And the Dallas Cowboys acquired Trey Lance from the San Francisco 49ers in exchange for a 2024 late round, 4th round pick. The trade was finalized in 2023. So this is like almost the exact scenario, right? But the reason why we're willing to move on from Trey Lance was because they located their quarterback. You know, they got Brock Purdy in the same draft, and Brock Purdy is still their starting quarterback. And now, you know, he's leading that franchise. And, you know, during that time, Sam Darnold came in and kind of made not Anthony Richardson, but he made Trey Lance expendable, and they were willing to move off of him, right? Now, the Cowboys, when they drafted Trey Lance and traded for Trey Lance, they saw him as a potential developmental prospect, right? Despite the limited game experience, they saw him as a guy that could be the quarterback of the future, maybe be a guy that could replace Dak Prescott. And that hasn't worked out. They moved on. He's moved on to the Chargers. So getting back to Anthony Richardson, you know, Anthony Richardson, man, and that experiment is something that I can definitely see the Raiders getting into, right? Because of the fact that we do have the infrastructure to develop a young quarterback. And you have a guy in a Chip Kelly who has been successful with mobile quarterbacks. You have a guy in Pete Carroll has been successful with mobile quarterbacks. I mean, he had Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, you know, got him the 2 Super Bowls, won 1. Russell Wilson was a guy who was thought of as an athlete more than a quarterback, and he was able to develop him and live with that, right? Because Russell, in the beginning of his career, made a lot of dynamic plays with his feet and his arm, right? And then you go on to the Geno Smith caveat. Like, Geno Smith is a guy that Pete Carroll helped develop, right? Pete Carroll helped develop this guy, and now you were looking at one of the 10 best quarterbacks in this league. But this was a guy who was written off too. Like he said, you know, I was written off, but I ain't right back. And I can definitely see the Raiders making a move on Anthony Richardson if the compensation is similar to what the Dallas Cowboys paid for Trey Lance. Now, a 4th round pick is not the highest pick, but it's not a low pick, right? And we have guys on this roster who were drafted lower in the draft that don't have an eighth of the talent physically that Anthony Richardson does. It's just clear, right? And if I'm being honest, listen, I don't know whether the Raiders should do this, but what I do know is that when I look at an Aiden O'Connell, who was a low round draft pick, I look at a guy that has started in this league, has had some success in this league, but is a guy that, if we're being honest, is not the most physically talented fellow in the world, right? And I believe that if you can kind of marry the physical attributes with the mental part of the game, Anthony Richardson could be one of the very best in this league. Now, have we seen that done a lot in the National Football League? It's almost like finding a needle in a haystack. But I am of the estimation that when you have an elite talent at quarterback and you have people like Chip Kelly in the building, it is your duty to try to see if you can develop said talent. Now, I don't necessarily know what the Raiders should do or what they will do, right? But what I don't want to see is you know, us have a situation where if you have guys in the building that believe in him and they believe that they can develop this guy, for the Raiders to not take that move because it's not the popular move. If you really believe in Anthony Richardson, right, and you can sit down with him, you can, and you've had interactions with him, right? And this is another part of the caveat as well. Pete Carroll is a guy who scouted him extensively because they were thinking about taking him. So I'm sure that they've had conversations. I'm sure that he sat down and saw what kind of man this kid is, right? And when you have a Chip Kelly, this is a guy who coached against him when he was in college. So I'm sure Chip Kelly has kind of papers on this kid. Now, is this the kind of move that Tom Brady would sign off on? Now, he is not the main owner, but I would almost be certain that the Raiders defer to Tom Brady's opinion on certain things because of how great of a quarterback, probably the greatest quarterback that this league has ever seen. So I'm sure that John Spytek and Pete Carroll and guys like that definitely pick Brady's brain. And what would he think about a kid that has that level of talent but has not been able to kind of put it together? So, guys, I'm giving you both ways to look at it. But my question to you is, what do you guys think? Do you guys think this is something that you would be interested in as a fan base? Would you be interested in the Raiders trying to go out there and develop Anthony Richardson under the Pete Carroll umbrella, giving them that elite talent? And if you can marry that elite talent, then now you're in a situation where you can compete, because the Raiders have a lot of talent, man. And if they were able to go out there and develop a young quarterback like Anthony Richardson, it could pay dividends further down the line, because this is a guy who was drafted high, did not do well, right? And he's on a 2-year deal that's pretty cheap. And if you sit him on a bench and develop him, you can sign him for peanuts, and you can have a franchise quarterback for peanuts, right? And build the rest of this team for the next 8 to 10 years in a way that it would be phenomenal. Now, conversely, have we seen quarterbacks that have played this bad? Now, this guy is historically bad when it comes to all of the numbers that I named for you. He is historically bad. So would we be one of those teams that kind of catch lightning in a bottle and be able to develop Anthony Richardson? It's a very compelling thing. And I'm going to be honest with you. I really don't necessarily lean either which way. I can see the reason why a team would stay away from Anthony Richardson, but I also am one of these guys, and call it the Raider in me, call it the Al Davis in me, right? This just seems like a Raider ass move. It does. It seems like something that Al would have done, right, in his heyday, and it seems like something that only the Raiders can make successful. So, guys, if you guys want to leave your comments, leave them in the chat. We'll get back to you. Maybe we'll do a live, down the line, probably, a little later. And tell me what you guys think about this. Do you think the Raiders should get in the Anthony Richardson business? Guys, listen, if you like what you hear here, hit that like, hit that subscribe. Raider Nation Unlimited. I'm your man, Wasted Talent. I am out. We on the road to 15K. And if you guys want to see me do more pre-recorded stuff, let me know in the chat. Hey, guys, we out of here, man. Peace. Make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe, share this thing out to all social media, and make sure you guys pay your bar tabs for your brother Wasted, man. I am out of here.